Right. Welcome, brothers. Thank you for joining us for another edition of the Psi Upsilon virtual speaker series, sharing the best of our brotherhood. I am your director of engagement, Jonathan Chaffin, Gamma Tau 2000, Georgia Tech, for those of you that aren't remembering your pledge ed. Today we have the honor of speaking with Tom Allan, Theta Theta 89, University of Washington, who is in his second or third career as the and maven behind Madrona Distillery, and we look forward to talking with him. So just quick show notes. Type any questions you'd like asked in the QA below. We aim for a moderated conversational tone, which means that Tom and I will be talking, but I will ask your questions by proxy. We might not get to them immediately, but we will try to get to all of them. The speaker series is produced free on a 6-week to 2-month basis by the foundation. Your donations are appreciated to help us keep this show running. And you can do that by going to sciu.org slash foundation gift or other links on the website. And with that, we're going to get off the show notes and stop sharing. All right. Well, Tom, thank you for joining us at 5 p.m. at the end of your workday here a little later for us on the East Coast. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, Tom Allan, Theta Theta 89. Was at the University of Washington with at least one or two other people that are on the Zoom call right now. Spent a good deal of my career in beverage, but with a wholesaler in sales, and eventually after graduate school going into finance and business analytics in this industry, and decided I wanted to go out and do some more exciting analytics and finance and in much riskier businesses. So I spent 15 plus years with startups, mostly in advertising and online media. And, during that 15 years, it was never very exciting to tell people what I was doing. I was excited about it, particularly when the businesses were doing well, but explaining forecast models and things like that to folks at a cocktail party was usually fairly boring and usually ended the conversation. So as I got to the point where I was ready to leave Prudential, which was my last employer, not much of a startup, but they bought one that I worked for, I kind of refocused back on this business that I missed so much. And one aspect of it that I really had wanted to explore 20 years ago was distillation. I'm a longtime home brewer, like 30 plus years. And during my last couple of years at Prudential, I actually bought a small still. Don't let the feds know about that. And was experimenting with a few things. I mean, I made some whiskeys, I made some blackberry eau de vies, and things were kind of turning out well, and I liked it. And I've always been a kind of a gin drinker, pretty passionate about gin. So I shifted to trying to make gin with very little guidance at that time. And one thing I did know is I had a gin that had cardamom in it, and I really liked the cardamom. What I didn't know was how much cardamom to put in the botanical bill. So that first batch I ever distilled, there's still a bottle of it sitting around called the Cardabomb, because it was so much cardamom, and all I could do was use it as a mixer for other gins that would become more cardamom forward gins. Yeah, a couple of mistakes along the way, but I got serious about it. Did some graduate work, so I got a graduate certificate in winemaking from UC Davis, and then I got accepted to Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh a few years back. Their Institute for Brewing and Distilling is one of the premier ones in the world for that. You can go all the way to a PhD in that program, but already having a master's, I decided to stop at the graduate certificate level, which gave me everything I needed, including all about making whiskey. So quite a bit of background in grain selection, malting, boiling, fermenting, all that stuff. I had to get all of the microbiology, the biochem, and the chemical engineering in that program, and finished all those up a few years back, just in time to actually break walls and build out my tasting room in Redmond, Washington. So we've been actively, legally producing gin since February of 2024. And it's so far been a great 18 months with lots of international recognition, including our induction into the Gin Guild in London this last spring. Met lots of great distillers, many of whom distill gins that you all know. And they are now our colleagues, and I'm kind of proud to be among them. So we've been very busy this summer, lots of public events. I'm doing some of my favorite things, which is new product development. So I'm developing a Navy strength gin that should be released once I finish my battle with the Tax and Trade Bureau over the labeling, which we can get into that later. But just amazing our government at work at times, the way they consistently apply the law. Anyway, so that one's a cool one because behind me down on the beach up here on Orcas Island, some of the ingredients for that gin came from that beach, most notably bull kelp, which interestingly does somehow carry through. There's no true salinity that makes it through distillation, but when you taste it, you swear that you are tasting sea salt. And I don't, somebody told me once that it was iodine that was doing that, but I'm not sure. Either way, it's delicious gin, and hopefully everybody will be able to order it from passionspirits.com by the end of September. So that's enough intro, but that's that's me, and that's the start of the business.
Wonderful. Well, I know certainly two things that people are going to be interested in. So you choose your own adventure. Would you rather talk about the process of breaking walls, as you mentioned, or uh, talking about sort of what that getting inducted to the guild was like, what that
Well,
process was?
we can start with the guild. I mean, that started actually a little over a year ago. The Gin Guild is based in London. It's basically a sub company of a liveried company of London, which is they date back, nearly 1,000 years. The liveried companies of London. Like there's the worshipful company of drapers. There's the worshipful company of cart drivers. I mean, that goes back forever. And what it was the monarch at the time would basically grant a charter for these companies to essentially be a guild within the city of London, and would give them certain rights as merchants, and it would be up to them to enforce standards for whatever business that they were in, rather than the crown having to create all of the regulations. So I don't know what the total number of liveried companies there is in London, but it's a lot of them. Some of them are very new and have to do with technology. But this particular one, the parent company of the Gin Guild is the Worshipful Company of Distillers, which was formed up in 1637. Charles I granted that charter, and it's been going ever since. The actual sub company, the Gin Guild, was only started about 15 years ago, to focus specifically on the challenges that gin distillers face. And it actually includes not just distillers, but also many other people from the industry, from Diageo, from Pernod Ricard, writers, bloggers. Anybody that is serving the gin industry is in that. So we got a solicitation from them to go to Gymposium back in 2024, and I thought, what a great reason to go to London for the first time. So we traveled over there and ended up in what has become my favorite gin bar on our first night in London, which is the lobby bar at Duke's Hotel in St. James's Place. And Alessandro, the proprietor there, makes a fantastic martini. And
Okay.
it's a frozen martini, undiluted, goes straight from a sub-zero freezer into your glass with exactly this kind of cut of the lemon peel in it. And they'll only serve you two because there's no ice to dilute. It is straight gin. And,
Ah,
and I had the two, and then I went back, and that cured the jet lag on night number one. But in that bar, I mean, by weird happenstance, Desmond Payne sat down at the table next to us, waiting for his group. So he started talking to us, and Desmond Payne uh, comma MBE, member of the British Empire, is the master distiller of Beefeater. And he was going to be the opening speaker at Gymposium 5 days. So it just, I mean, it was very serendipitous to run into him there. And we spent a whole day with gin distillers and writers, and I was hooked. And I immediately was thinking, when can we join this? But there's requirements. You have to have been in the business for a certain number of time. You've got to get people to recommend you. And so it took until this spring to actually get into the Gin Guild, which is relatively fast for a company that was only formed 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're there now. We had a great induction ceremony that night, went to the after party with, the distillers from Bombay and from Beefeater and from Sipsmith and a bunch of others, and just had a great time with those folks. So I'm kind of very happy to be associated with them. And I've since been invited to join the Worshipful Company of Distillers, which I think that one requires that you are a distillery. I don't think there are any ancillary memberships to that guild.
That's awesome. I'm actually very familiar with similar folks, except from the rum side. So that's like Gymposium is new to me, but like Tales of the Cocktail and Ian Burrell is the rum ambassador from the UK who promotes all rum. So I can imagine I ran into him at a bar, and I can
Really?
yeah. Yeah. If you and so I can empathize and understand that, oh, I'm talking to this normal nice guy who's sitting here at the bar, and we're just sitting here enjoying the spirits, and then you find out like, oh wait,
Yeah.
this is a very certain class of living legend I'm sitting here passing the time with. That's wonderful. Um, I I feel like I heard from you at some point that you were also like sort of checking out botanicals or thinking like learning about them, and do you have
Yeah. The guy who one of the great, other than the scientific knowledge that you get at Harriet Watt University, you are also like in the company of people that are doing some of they're at the forefront of research into spirits in general, whether it's whiskey or gin. But one of my professors, my actual professor of distillation, he's definitely a gin guy. Professor Matthew Pauly, he just got his PhD at Harriet Watt, and his PhD is in gin botanicals. So he has access to all this, spectrophotometers, all this equipment where he actually goes through and like electronic sniffers that will detect the presence, the aromas of things that are in gin. And he actually created I like an encyclopedia of botanicals using some of that research, and has presented on it. You can find most of the stuff online. He'll he will go through a gin and figure out the chemical elements that are in it and tie it back to the botanicals that went in there. And he can have the relative concentrations of the different aspects of that gin, which is pretty fascinating. And Harriet Watt, even for the students, publishes, I mean, this is probably 50 years old, but baseline recipes, right? You want a spicy gin, here you go. Basic London Dry, here you go. Botanical, what some people call botanical one, that are more licoricey flavored. So you kind of can have a baseline, and then it's just like that's just a canvas. Then on top of that, you can start saying to yourself, all right, what happens if you put a little lavender into that one? What would more grapefruit peel do in this gin? What were the different relative strengths of gin? My gins vary from 80 to 114 proof. And that different and the funny thing is the 80 proof one is when people taste it, they get more of an alcoholic flavor out of 80 proof than the 92, which is my dry gin, my flagship basically. So it's just endless. You could just do that all the time, but when you're mostly a sole proprietor with a couple people helping you, the marketing, the finance, mop on the floors, production, it's rare that I actually get the chance to get in there and experiment, because I've got three different size stills, so that I don't have to use, a 55-gallon still to test things. Like I've got a 15-gallon, and I even have a 5-gallon one. And I actually even I have a lab, benchtop one that I can do very tiny distillations in. So I love doing that when I get the chance to do it, and so does that professor. And he consulted with me. I had 8 recipes that I went through, and then I engaged, after I got my certificate and I was out of school, I hired that professor to do some consulting, taste my gins. I gave him a target area using some other known brands. I want to kind of be in this range of flavor profile. And he helped me with this final recipe, which has garnered multiple double golds, and even recently a platinum from the SIP Awards. And since then, I've done all of my own product development. So my Garden Club gin that has rose petals and lavender from up here on the island, my Navy Strength have all been our own development since then.
Wonderful. I very much enjoyed the Garden Club. I got to try that at convention. David Hollis brought a bottle.
Oh, great.
That was very nice. And let me ask you, we've been talking gin, but what are some of the other spirits that you've started experimenting with?
Well, the only other spirits I have in the distillery are rum, which, the rum was basically, I don't distill it. I'm not ruling out doing it, but I would have to do it in my 15 or 20 gallon because I'll only run gin through my primary commercial still. I just don't want to
Sure.
do anything that could possibly alter the flavor of the gins. So I would do it through a different still. That rum was brought in just for my sailing and tiki friends. And so I
I got
brought in multiple different lots of Caribbean rums from Virgin Islands, Martinique, Jamaica, St. Kitts, and I blended them. Some of those were already aged, and it was a mix. Like when you see a blended Scotch whiskey, whether it's Famous Grouse or Johnny Walker or whatever, what they've done to create that whiskey is the primary ingredient in it is created in a continuous column still. So it's a pretty high rectification of Scottish malts that go into that. So what comes out is crystal clear, like everything that comes out of a still, but also it's probably somewhere around 180 proof or higher. So not a ton of flavor is left in it when you rectify something to that level, but it's a very clean flavor. That becomes probably 70 to 85% of a blended scotch. Then they go and they source pot distilled scotch from malt distilleries in Scotland. And they are under much tighter regulations about what kind of malt they can use, um, what kind of still they can use. They can't use one of those rectifying stills. It's basically a pot, right? Tons of flavor, just like with whiskey, US whiskey distillation. A pot creates a lot of flavors,
Right.
including some that are like, congeners that could taste a little moonshiny and things like that. But then when you blend everything back in to that larger component, you end up with a lot of layers of flavor in that scotch. Rum blending is similar. Like, so I get 190 proof rum from the U.S. Virgin Islands that is just, it's rectified in one of those big stills, almost
Right.
a vodka still. And then you go to these little distilleries and pull in portions of theirs, which some of them on their own might not taste that great, but as a blend of different flavors and then into that light spirit becomes something that is very palatable. And then I take that and I put it in oak. And right now, I mean, I just bottled for a tasting room event 2 cases of it or 2 6 packs of it at 14 months of age in oak, and it is absolutely delicious. It was good when it went into that oak, and now it is just, I mean, it's out of this world rum. So I very clear labeling when I do something like that.
Yeah.
Blended by Madrona Distillery, not distilled by. And
Fair.
then I also have vodka because the base of all of my spirits is a very high quality wheat vodka, essentially. But it comes in at 192 proof,
Right.
right? So it's 96% and change ethanol, and that is the traditional way to do London dry gin. You don't do, I mean, there are distillers out there that do grain to glass gins. I haven't found one yet that I can drink. like a
Right.
London Dry, right? They taste much more
Right.
like a Genever. And if you're in for a Genever kind of experience, it's great. It's a great story. But London Dry Gin is supposed to start neutral. And the only flavors you should be getting out of it are the botanical bill. And which is not to say that the underlying spirit is unimportant, because I think wheat just makes a different mouthfeel and a different backdrop for the botanicals. I think it is there. I tasted through 30 different, from corn to potato, um, wheat, barley, all sorts of stuff. And I just settled on wheat, which is also traditionally what the British gins are made. I think winter wheat is what they have always had available to them for that. So, anyway, I have this expensive ethanol sitting around, and I was like, and when I first opened the doors, I was like, I'm going to open the doors with one product. Like, that's kind of a boring tasting. I got to have a second thing. So I just proofed down, and blended that 192 proof stuff with filtered Cascade Mountain water, and it turns out at 80 proof, that stuff is absolutely delicious. And almost immediately placed that with a bar in the SeaTac airport. Like,
Nice.
they tasted it, they brought it in. So it was kind of ironic that one of my first big placements was something that I really have very little to do with.
Sure. Um, oh, Don asked, do you know if is the winter wheat, is that a red or a white wheat?
I imagine it's white. Yeah.
Uh,
This wheat is grown in Canada, right? In the UK, I'm going to assume that it's white wheat, but I could be wrong about that.
Reasonable. And also, quick
Oh,
side. Oh,
Oliver, I see Oliver's question there.
yeah, it's
So
red.
I am authorized to ship to retailers in California. So if you have a retailer near you that you can go and say, "Hey, can you stock this gin for me?" I have essentially what is a virtual wholesaler that gets me into about a dozen states in the US. And so far I've only proved out um, that chain in the state of Illinois. So the Chicago Club on Michigan Avenue brought in Madrona Gin, and they brought it in through this virtual wholesaler called libdib.com. And so I do the direct shipment, but I do it through them, and the states are allowing, certain states have allowed that. So it never actually is handled by a, a landed truck type wholesaler in the state, but I can ship to any licensed bar, restaurant, or liquor store in the state of California. And in addition to that, if you from California, you can order my spirits directly to be delivered to your house.
Excellent. Do you want to move over to the breaking walls section?
Oh yeah. So I'll say this to start, because I had this idea this morning that I was going to basically expose this BS I'm dealing with the TTB on LinkedIn, and risk them coming down hard on me, because I hate this kind of crap from regulators. Anybody who's watched Clarkson's Farm can understand where I'm coming from on stupidity of certain rules and unequal enforcement of rules. So there's a couple of steps when if I come out with a new product, and we'll use Navy strength as an example. You got to figure out what's going into it and in what proportions. I mean, if you shift a gram here and a gram there, I don't think the government cares so much, if it's not a material difference in the concentrations of any of those components in the final gin, right? So if you've got a recipe you submitted that's 5 grams per liter, and you end up with 6 grams per liter, I don't think they really care. Anybody from the TTB on there, please raise your hand. Anyway, but you submit that, they really care about what different botanicals are going into it. And the very first thing that I got rejected on in my dry gin was Madrona bark. Madrona bark is something that Coast Salish tribes have used as a medicinal for generations. It's probably going back hundreds and hundreds of years. They've chewed it straight. They've made tea out of it. It settles the stomach. I mean, you can buy Madrona bark tea on Amazon, but I submitted it as an inconsequential dilution in my first gin, and they rejected it and said you can't prove that it's safe in alcohol. I said it's safe to swallow whole and then have a drink after, but fine. But I didn't even fault them that much because this nice lady at the FDA, they basically referred me over to the FDA. This gal at the FDA gave me a long explanation of their rationale. I was like, I don't agree, but I really appreciate the fact that you laid it all. I mean, you put some thought into this and educating me on this. So all I have to do is go and prove basically that nobody drops dead if you dilute it in ethanol, which I'll do someday, but it's just not a priority. So, so once you put that stuff in there and you submit it to them, assume, you've maybe had to clarify a couple of ingredients, and then they say, boom, here's your approval for that recipe. Now we've got a formula approval. Next, you have your designers go in, create a label, and they send it to me, and I usually type up some wordy stuff on the back to get so that people understand kind of what gin we're making, right? You could just put gin and fine. Go to the website if you want to know how it tastes. But twice now I've submitted it and it's been rejected. And the reasoning that they put in there, and there's no place for you to respond and reply. They just say corrected. So this rejection was rejected for fraudulent and deceptive description. And then below it says, your product is gin. The only thing you can mention on it is juniper. And I was like, well, first of all, I know that's not true because I've read lots of back labels that had other things. And second of all, everybody knows juniper is in gin. So why would I bother wasting type on a label to say, hey, there's juniper in this, right? That's absolutely ridiculous. So in the most recent case, I said, blah blah blah. This great Navy strength gin includes sea kelp harvested on the beaches of Orcas Island, Washington. Blah blah blah. And I get that rejection. That is deceptive to mention that that's in there. And says so two different responses to the same submission. One says you can only mention juniper. The second time it was, if you mention anything other than juniper, you have to list every ingredient. Well, it seems like number one, both statements are wrong, but they also are not in agreement with each other.
Right.
So my third submission, I included screenshots of Sheringham Seaside Gin from British Columbia and Edinburgh Seaside Gin from Scotland, both TTB approved back labels. Both of them mention harvesting seaweed, one from the shores of Scotland, one from the shores of British Columbia. One of them doesn't mention juniper at all. The other one mentions juniper. And I put that in there, and I got the response back was, please remove the attachments. We're not allowed to discuss any others. You can only mention juniper on it, which means that this person looked at those labels, knew that they had approved that language, and still said you can only mention juniper. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I called my lawyers. So now the lawyers are going to handle it because I bent over on Garden Club because they twisted all the language that referred to lavender and rose in it. But I've got to stop. I've got to stop it at some point because there's some idiot somewhere at the TTB that they're allowing to make these decisions and not consistent with anybody else at the TTB. So, and having said that, I will say that everybody else at the TTB that I worked with to get my original license were fantastic and felt like they wanted me to get the license. I think is one person there that is responsible for labels. It's like, I am willy-nilly going to enjoy myself denying certain language
Yeah.
just to see what they say.
Oh, Don makes the observation that it sounds like dealing with city land use planners.
Probably.
And I was actually going to say it reminds me the Gamma has been trying to build a deck, a 20 foot by 5 or by 10 foot, like 5 feet off the ground, 3 feet off the ground deck. And we've gotten in arguments like, where's the fire exit? It's like, well, you stepped down. I said 5 feet. I meant 2 feet, maybe. The fire exit is you step down. Well, what is the maximum capacity? I don't know. For a moment, they dinged us for trying to build a. It doesn't matter. It was silly. But yeah,
What was your first mistake there?
getting the permit was
Yeah, permitting a deck.
and actually, Don, it is only over 2 feet or only over 18 inches in one corner.
Yep. So
Uh,
put a couple of rocks around that corner and then it'll be 18 inches.
we've got it done now. It's just it was this one person when that yeah. Those of you with housing corporations, you understand this so well, as do you, Don. Um, so back to so okay, you got your label approved, you've got your bottles going.
Yeah.
What was building out the tasting room and distillery like?
Yeah, that was fun. I mean, the city that I chose to place the distillery was not my first choice. I looked at a few others, but the city of Redmond, I avoided initially because they have no other distilleries. Right next door is the city of Woodinville, and Woodinville has probably 140 winery tasting rooms and at least a dozen distilleries already operating there. Anybody who's traveled up to there's a couple people from out east that I think I even went out into wine tasting country with a few years back. But that is like Woodinville, Washington. It's only 10 minutes away from where the distillery is kind of where I thought that's where I need to be, if not in Kirkland on the waterfront. But it was really, really 3 years ago, very difficult to find light industrial space because of the fact everybody was going to Woodinville. As soon as space like that popped up, it was gone. And
Sure.
and come to find out after the fact that the city of Woodinville likes to really extract all they can out of new wineries and distilleries that come into that city that want to build. I thought Redmond would be hard to work with because they didn't have any distilleries. And it turned out that the zoning guy he's actually a gin tourist. Like he travels the world tasting gin. So we got all that. We got all the zoning stuff out of the way in a pre-meeting before my lease was solidified. And he gave me the confidence to sign the lease that you're exactly what we want in Redmond. So yeah, have confidence in signing that lease. And sure enough, I mean, it seemed, I mean, there's always a couple of wiggles with submitting plans and stuff like that. But for the most part, I felt like I had a city that was really kind of behind me in doing it. That felt like Woodinville was eating their lunch in this
Hmm.
space, and they wanted to be a player. So that part was great. It's still, just turning turning plans and things like that. We signed that lease in August of 23, and we got our building permit issued in November after the fire department had gone through all that stuff. And even the fire department, like I basically gave them the key code to get into the space and to come in and look at the still and do all that sort of stuff. Um, and and the assistant fire chief came up with a way for me to even avoid a change of use that would have required probably $20,000 worth of improvements in there. So I was really happy with all that. But once I got that permit, I got the permit like a week or so before Thanksgiving, and I went to work. I mean, because I built it out myself. So it was a 2,400 square foot, in an industrial building, 2,400 square foot shell. And I was gonna, basically demise a 400 square foot tasting room bar in there. And so I think I had the primary walls framed and tipped up within 5 days of that, anchored to the floor, attached to each other. I think I had the ceiling framed in a couple days after that. So in the first 7 to 10 days, the outline of the framing was all there. So then the only thing I had to hire out was electrical. So the electrical guys came in, put all that stuff in, um, got it all closed up by Christmas, final inspection by New Year's. And the only hitch in all that, because I was focused just on the tasting room, which was all the building permits were all about the tasting room. I had a friend come in on a weekend and run all the copper cooling lines to my still. And so there I am on New Year's Eve with the inspector. He was like, "Yep, yep, this is all good. This is all good." He's signing off on everything. And he looks up and he says, "Did you permit that copper?" I was like, no." He said, "Ah, no problem. Just go, just go submit, go do it over the counter, get the permit, and I'll sign off on it. You just send me a couple pictures." Well, the guy, my friend is a commercial plumber, but he did it moonlighting. You have to have a commercial plumber's permit or license in order to pull that permit. So it was a 1 week delay where I went through LinkedIn finding anybody I knew who was attached to a commercial plumber, and ended up finding a sailing buddy who's part owner in University Mechanical, which has a commercial plumbing division.
Right.
He sent his guy in, inspected the work, said you can use our permit number, or yeah, and got it. So boom, didn't even charge me. Otherwise, I would have to rip everything out, hire somebody, come back in
Oh,
and redo it. So I had a lot of people help me out along the way, which is very nice.
excellent. Glad you're able to dodge that bullet.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Well,
Did Kush ever join this? I mean, he's gone through, I'm sure, a lot of this stuff with his winery.
I'm sure he has. I actually got to see that. He is not on here now. I'm not sure
Oh,
if he
that's too bad.
bounced in. I know he registered. Um, let's see. You have anything? Now is about the time we would typically open up to Q&A for anybody in the audience that's been sitting on any questions. And while we see if there's any of that, what are you playing with now? What are you enjoying what's next?
So the last step, I'm assuming I'm going to win my little battle on the labeling.
Oh,
I'll get um, I'll get labels printed for the Navy strength and do a kickoff of that. But really, I think the focus right now is the website and SEO work. I realize that I kind of created a website 2 years ago and have made little tweaks, like some cool things, like if you go onto the website and go to where can I buy this, it uses your GPS to zoom in. So like if you're in Missouri, you're just going to see a map of your town with nothing there. Or certainly around the Pacific Northwest, it's a helpful tool to figure out what bars, golf courses, and stores have the product. But beyond little things like that, I haven't done any of the back end stuff that make people find it. Like I look in there and discover that all the people that end up on the website searched for Madrona Distillery. They didn't search for, gin gimlet, something that I'm known for. Um, so I so this week up here on Orcas, I get up in the morning. I've been putting in SEO tools to start making it a lot easier for people to find the site. And one of my models for it is James Gin. I don't know how many people on here have heard of James. What's the guy from the Grand Tour and Top Gear? Anyway, he has a gin that he makes in England
okay.
called James Gin, Gin for the People, and
Mm,
he's so funny, and just his quirky personality has driven his business in the U.S. He uses the same online retailer that I just signed up with, but it's just all, I mean, he's obviously got a great team of people that have designed the website, put in all the metadata, put in all the recipes. So I've got I'm working on that, accumulating my little notebook of gin cocktail recipes and sticking them on the page, and then doing the back end metadata work and make sure it gets picked up and get some traffic to the site that is not direct traffic, because Google, I
right.
I can't run ads on Google because I've got an online store that sells alcohol on the site, for some reason they won't do that. They're happy to do it for free. They'll tell you how to optimize to get that traffic there, but they don't want to take my money for it. So you're
Huh.
kind of limited to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, that kind of advertising to drive traffic back,
Right.
which I'll do. But I'd like to get all the free stuff that I can possibly get out of Google as well. So
Sure.
yeah, so lots of work around that. And, Oliver, it's not Richard Hammond. It's James. I mean, usually I say his name probably 5 times a day because I love everything that he's done with his gin brand. So somebody please pop it in there. Uh, James May. Yep, James May, who is brilliant. I mean, I all those guys have their own way of entertaining me. Clarkson and Clarkson's Farm is endless entertainment for how he takes on bureaucracy, and James May, just his quirkiness. And oh, and by the way, his honesty in reviewing other products, and the fact that
Sure.
he's always um, getting on Ryan Reynolds about his aviation jet. So, um, let's see. There's some.
Yeah, we got
Let me see if I can catch up on some of these.
we've got one from Joey who works in the cannabis extraction industry,
Yeah.
quite a bit of distillation of the oil. What
Uh-huh.
does the process flow look like?
So the process for
For-
gin distillation, I mean, distillation is distillation. Like a lot of the chemical engineering we went through at Harriet Watt, it was actually distillation of petroleum, that sort of stuff. A lot of the science was developed because a lot of the money's come in on that side. So for a typical distillation for me is, let's say I come in Monday morning, I measure out all the different botanicals. I I put a blend of 60% ethanol and filtered water in the still, and I let it soak for a day. Usually 24 hours of maceration is sufficient, so that you don't get everything out of just the heat. You're getting some of it out of cold maceration. Come in early the next day, fire up that still to 180 degrees, and run it, varying that temperature, basically increasing it as the ethanol percentage declines throughout the day. And I think it's about 10 hours though when I pull it off at the end. And then there's a blending process and an ethanol and water blending process that takes place over about 2 weeks because you don't want to do it too fast because the blend takes a while to settle. And for the ethanol and the water, but also the different oils in the botanicals to I don't know, it's weird. It shouldn't change at all, but it changes for a couple weeks and then it doesn't change at all after that. And then I bottle it. But yeah, it's 180 degrees is what it is to start, and it's not more than 195 to 200 degrees in the end of it because you don't want to start boiling out a bunch of stuff that you don't want in your gin. And even at the very end, the stuff that I'm pulling off, I'm still over 72% ethanol in that drip that's coming out of it. So I don't
Mhm.
drive it down. You can drive it down into the 60% or whatever, but you're starting to get some vegetal and cooked flavors in it. So there's still probably, you know, 1% ethanol or less left in that wash when I toss it out. And cannabis and alcohol is an interesting thing, by the way. It's not legal in our state. I think Illinois, like I could make a product for Illinois that actually had cannabis in it, which is kind of interesting. But I'll say that the kelp leaf, not the body of the kelp leaf puts a little bit of that aroma into the gin, which I think is kind of interesting.
Hmm.
The Bethan and Global favorite gins. I have so many of them, and a lot of people will be surprised to find that a couple of them are actually made by Beefeater. Um, but Beefeater has their base London dry gin has not changed formulas since the 1860s or 1870s. They've probably changed sources and things like that, but that base recipe is about the same. And Desmond Payne, who's probably in the process of retiring and passing it on to some younger distillers I met there. You become kind of the keeper of the quality of the product, and they occasionally let you do some special things. And the guy before him created the Crown Jewel gin. I've got some on the shelf over here. It's about 100 proof gin. It's really like even in London, I think it's 80 or 90 pounds. for a bottle of this gin.
Oof.
But if you do the 3-hour tour at the distillery, which costs about the same as the bottle, you get a 3-hour tour and a full tasting and snacks, and they send you home with socks and a couple of mini bottles. So there's the cheat for the tour of Beefeater. So I really love that gin. Um, um, Sapphire, Anne Brock makes that. She runs that whole business for Bombay. She's one of like the greatest stewards of quality in gin at the Gin Guild. Like, I mean, I've seen her pop up in a seminar and tell somebody, you can't say that about gin. I'm like, okay. She's about 5'5", but she gets her message across. Boodles. I don't know, last time somebody had Boodles, but Boodles was sort of one of it was in this triangle of flavor profiles that I had in mind when I created the dry gin.
Ah.
Um, but my favorite steakhouse gin with blue cheese olives is Tanqueray 10, which is just an exquisite, very citrus forward, a little less. They back off on the juniper because a lot of people with Tanqueray, they think that's the reason they don't like gin, because Tanqueray has traditionally been one of the most juniper forward of gins. So they backed off on the juniper, put whole citrus fruit in the distillation for Tanqueray 10. So it's got a very different flavor profile. Generally, we only put like the peel, lemon peel, orange peel, bergamot, whatever. Very rare instance where you find somebody putting whole citrus fruit into a gin. Um, yeah, one that's very similar to our dry gin is High Clear Castle gin, which is a little bit hard to find in the U.S. High Clear Castle is the castle that they use in the Cotswolds for uh, Downton Abbey,
Oh, okay.
and so they've got botanicals in there that are selected from the gardens at Highclere Castle. I don't know what other association they have with them, but that's a delicious gin. I could go on for a long time because there's a lot of gin that I like. There's one from St. George Spirits down in the Bay Area. Um, and I'm gonna something like Valley Gin or something like that. But they
Uh-huh.
use some really good citrus like orange and mandarin from a neighboring orchard in it. And so it's a very citrus forward gin. And by the way, a lot of these people that make these gins, it's probably the most female dominated distillation industry.
Hmm.
St. George gin, um, Hendrick's gin, Leslie Gracie. She's about this, 5'3" little old gal with a ponytail halfway down her back. She was a scientist working for William Grant, and 20 years ago they said, "Design us a gin," and that was the first thing. And I think they picked her because she's just a passionate gardener, and so she just
Ah,
started mixing stuff in, and she's the one that kind of came up with, "Hey, cucumber does really well in here." Anne Brock runs one of the biggest businesses in the world for Bombay. I mean, and it's
yeah.
one after another that I run into in this business. I think the attention to flavor and the subtlety of flavors, I think is I think often people I think there's been studies that women are just better at that kind of sensing of subtle flavors and aromas, and it makes sense that you'd find more of them making gin.
Sure. St. George makes a spectacular agricole, by the way.
They do?
Yeah.
St.
Oh,
George in California?
yeah.
Wow. She's an ace pickleball player.
No. Yeah, Jess Frame turned me on to tea punches with a bottle of St. George, California agricole rum.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna have to see how I can find that. I'll probably have to order it online.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, excellent. Well, we're towards the end of our time, so I'm gonna ask you a question and then go into our closing show notes, then come back.
Okay.
And that question we ask everybody is can you think of a time when you were working closely with somebody or out in the world and you ran into somebody who you later discovered was a Psi brother?
Yes.
I figured, but I'll be right back to that. Let's
Okay.
let me share here. All right. Brothers, I want to make sure to run through some upcoming events that we have with Psi U. Uh, First off, I always recommend that you register for our speaker series, both virtually or in person. We had a very nice talk with Mike Egan in Seattle last February. We'll be having more in the coming, we have one or two in person every year. Uh, all of our activities are up on sciu.org. There is the Psi Upsilon Professional Networking group on LinkedIn. Please share your professional achievements. If you're looking for a job, absolutely do that. If you've got a job or an internship, do that. Every spring, we have a flood of graduating undergrads join looking for what they're going to do with the rest of their lives. Upcoming events, we've got the Psi Upsilon All Psi U Golf Tournament in New York. Expecting maybe 24 or 30 brothers out there from all chapters. Last year, the Omega took it, so some of you golfers need to go give them a run for their money. And then our next virtual speaker series is School Stress and You, How to Beat Overwhelm Before It Beats You. It is aimed at students and parents, but has applicable stuff for everyone, and is part of the timing is in September to help underscore Psi U's commitment to health and wellness of our undergrads in particular. And our speaker is Dr. Ben Bernstein, Kappa 69, who we met at the in San Francisco at the out of my head the Fish Fund Venture Summit, which we will be having again in April. Just to close up one more time. If you enjoyed the talk, please consider making a tax-deductible donation to the Psi Upsilon Foundation. You can do it at sciu.org or text GIVE to 317-399-4318. There will be video notes, and the video will be posted on our YouTube channel, which I recommend all brothers subscribe to because it makes us all feel good. Here we're going to stop sharing. We're going to go rejoin Tom, and we're going to listen to a story or two.
Oh, at least one. And,
At least
and since I know Beth Ann is still on the call, she sent me a message today. In other business, Beth Ann, you can call me anytime after 11 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. So, and we'll take care of that part of it. So the most recent example of this, I think if I racked my brain, there's probably a half dozen times that I dealt with somebody and figured out later on. I was like, oh my gosh, that's Psi U. Most recently, when I was building out this space, trying to find a contractor that will pay attention to a small job is one of the reasons that I got a contractor's license just to do the build out and then let it all expire, right? Because I wanted to be able to file all my own stuff, because finding a general that would care about this job would be impossible. Same thing with the trades, like, electricians, plumbers, these guys, the good ones, they're in incredible demand.
right.
And then hooking up the electrical equipment, like just the still itself. You think about one of the simplest parts of the still is the pump used to clean it out. Well, that pump had 12 wires going into it and these very complicated controllers. So I just didn't even know where to start with that. So I'm in between two breweries. One of them's called Postdoc Brewing and the other's called Mac and Jack Brewing. Mac and Jack's been around for 20 plus 30 years. But I checked in with the owner of Postdoc. He came over, just wanted to see what I was doing. So we were talking, and I was like, yeah, my still's here. I've still got to find an electrician. It's like, oh, use our guy, right? He did a great job for us here. He does a lot of breweries, so you probably can figure out this equipment because, brewery boiling equipment, things like that, very similar technology. So he turns me on to these guys that really kind of saved me, did a great job of all of it. And I don't know, I think it might have been Tom Fox might have told me after the fact. He's like, oh, well, that's Tom Schmidlin. He's an ADA that runs Postdoc Brewing. I was like, oh my gosh. So we've connected a couple of times since then. But Tom makes unbelievable beer. He and his wife, I don't know, they did undergrad at Lehigh. I don't know where they did their doctorate, but they did the postdoctorate in, I assume, microbiology at the University of Washington, and decided they were going to use their doctorates to make beer, and they make really tremendous beer, a great variety of it.
That is so cool that you're next door to
Yep.
postdoc.
Yep.
They the first time we did a virtual speaker series, summer hospitality series, it was Cushing Donovan talking about his vineyard and Tom talking about postdoc. You can
Seriously, so Tom's been on one. That's great. That's great.
yeah. Yeah, if you check the YouTube channel, we've got video of him talking a couple of years ago.
Wow. And Cushing has hosted a bunch of us down in
So
San,
yeah.
well, in Sonoma, but I forget the name of the actual town that it's in. Yeah, he was a great host. Tasted some fantastic stuff. And I'm still in his club, and I still get phone. His dad is the best salesman in the year in the world, by the way. Whenever I see his number pop up on my phone, I'm like, oh, this is going to be expensive. And Oliver, my background is not fake. This is you're looking out into East Sound, Washington. It's
Beautiful.
it's very real. And somehow the rooster has stayed quiet the entire time. My neighbor hasn't run his table saw the entire time, and no cars have driven by. So I feel very lucky this last hour.
Marvelous. Well, brother, I want to be respectful of your time. I could talk to you for the rest of the night, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Have a
I appreciate all the folks that I expected maybe a dozen people would come in, but this has been great.
excellent. Well, so thank you very much. Have a great day. Have a great evening. And like I said, the recording will go up in a couple of days up on YouTube, maybe a little later because of the holiday, and we'll get it shared around.
All right,
And
thank you.
thank you. Thanks, everybody.